How is it going, everyone? And welcome back to another exhilarating episode of Buddy's House of Horror podcast. And welcome to part 2 of every Halloween film ranked, or re-ranked rather. This is the Halloween Kills edition of the show, which essentially means it is part 2 out of our trilogy of re-ranking every single film within the Halloween franchise. All 13 films ranked from worst to first. So if you haven't seen part 1 yet, definitely make sure you go and check that out first, and then carry on with this episode. And we're going to get right to it, but before we do that, I want to make sure all you guys, if you love the show, if you like the show, if you want more of the show, you need to make sure that you're subscribing to it wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you're listening. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, leaving me a rating and a review, leaving a comment if you can, giving the show a thumbs up if you can, and help spread the good word about Buddy's House of Horror. If you have any friends that you think would like the show, make sure you're pointing this show in their direction. And without further ado, we're going to get to Halloween Kills edition of every single Halloween film ranked. So now it's time to get spooky.
All right, my number 8. This is one that I think it's kind of been around the same placement as the last time. Honestly, 6 through 8 for me could flip probably the easiest of any of them. I honestly looked at my list earlier and I was like, I thought my 6 was 7. And I looked at it and I was like, should I change it real quick? But I'm going to just throw that little asterisk in there. I think 6 through 8 for me are the ones that are the easiest to change. I honestly would rate almost all these as similar star score. I wish we could tell the audience what we're fucking watching right now. Anyways, the ambiance is perfect. I want to continue to throw that out there. But my number 8, as of right now, is Halloween 2018.
Okay. All right.
So,
I respect it. I mean,
I like it. I've watched this film. This is probably the most rewatches of any modern film in the past 10 years. I've seen this 4 or 5 times now.
it's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot for me. I really do enjoy it. I have a good time each time I watch it. As you can hear me trying to flip through my notes. I still always feel, one thing I put in the notes is the researchers, podcasters. I feel like there's a lot of underutilized potential with those characters.
Well, yeah, and they get rid of them so quick, too. Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, those are your intro characters to get you through what you need to get to. But in this film, it does extend it out for, like, the first 20 minutes, half hour. Like, it's not... Yes. They're essentially the pre-credits kill, but it takes so long to get to it.
Yes. I just think that there was a lot of potential with them to build them throughout the film. Honestly, even maybe one of them, either one surviving and going to the second film. I think there could have been a nice like revenge angle or some sort of thing. And each time I watch it, I always feel the same. I feel like they could have done something with those guys. What do you think?
I agree. Like as it is, like it's just kind of, they essentially become throwaway characters.
Yes.
When like they were a big part of the marketing for this. Like
yes,
if you remember all the trailers for it, all like the sneak peeks, they were a big focus. At least that's what everything like focused on. But again, like as we talk about with this David Gordon Green stuff, like it kind of not always knows what it wants to be.
I think the biggest thing as we get talking about these films more is there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen as far as the writing and producers on these David Gordon Green films, and sometimes I just think there are too many ideas on the table, and they really needed someone to come in and say,
you gotta hone this in, guys. You gotta like pick something and
put this here, do this. This would be good for continuity. Again, talking about the newest Star Wars sequels, the problem is somehow they feel like a trilogy, but at the same time, they feel completely disjointed as 3 separate entities. They needed someone or something to just say, this works better here, this works better there. I'll stand on this, and I've said this before. I think if you rearranged parts of everything David Gordon Green did on these trilogies, you could have 3 incredible films and a very solid Halloween trilogy, in my opinion. But they had to do a lot of moving parts and take stuff from ends, put it in the first one, and that's my biggest thing with 2018 is I'm about to talk about. I cut you off though. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say like, that's just a big problem with Hollywood in general because you want to make it a trilogy, but you're not pitching it as a trilogy. You need to sort of have, this is where we're at, and maybe we don't know exactly how we're getting to the finish all the way, but this is the beginning. This is where we're ending. The problem with this is, like you said, with some of these films and even stuff we've talked about in like other franchises, like they're just throwing shit wherever and seeing what they need to roll with.
Yeah. Not a lot of payoffs in some of these either. So a couple notes that I put, positives. I think obviously like where Laurie's at as a character, the compound, everything. It's a very interesting take, one we've not seen in the franchise prior. One note. Judy Greer's acting feels a little flat. I don't think she's, for some reason, I don't care for her in either this one or Kills. I don't know why. I want to, but just sometimes it feels, her lines and the way she's acting just doesn't work for me. I don't know if you felt that way.
See, I like her in these films, but I don't think that she maybe was 100% the person that you should have gotten for this.
There we go.
I like everything she did. But I've said this, and I think it's like a controversial thing. There's nothing she did in this that Allison Hannigan couldn't have done better. The girl from American Pie.
Yeah.
For just some reason, like, she would have been perfect for that character. I don't know why, but I don't know.
I think the dad and son school bus sequence I still like a lot. Like with them talking about like him going to dance and he wants to go hunting. I think that's where some of David Gordon Green and Danny McBride's comedy. Like, it's smart, it's funny, but I also think the flip side of that sequence, which is perfect, and probably one of my favorites in the new trilogy, is they're having these lighthearted moments, and then all of a sudden the car slows down, and they frame this very eerie moment of the bus and the way the lighting and the shot.
Yeah.
I can see why David Gordon Green got this trilogy with some of the ways he frames stuff, the way that it looks, some of the writing. It's a similar problem I talked about with Rob Zombie earlier in the podcast where I can see why these people got it, but it's either too many cooks in the kitchen, not enough confidence in what their original visions were, too much studio interference, and that's a big thing where it comes off enjoyable, but it's disjointed. There's so many disjointed elements in these films.
It needed like a true like showrunner. It needed like a true person to be like, and obviously like they can take suggestions, critiques, but like when you look at Halloween Ends, like you look at the writing credits, there's like 6 fucking people.
There's too
like
many,
credited as like a writer. Like it needed some sort of clear focus for this new trilogy. Like I do agree with that.
I will say a couple final notes. I know we're going to talk about it more later with you. One thing I noticed more on this rewatch randomly is like the whole bathroom encounter when Myers is like getting the mask and like attacking the podcasters and stuff. It's just a weird tidbit. I would have preferred it took place somewhere a little bit more remote because the more I watch, there's like 1,000 background actors, like people just doing their daily, like you can literally see people like across the street getting coffee and doing stuff. And it's basically like you're in the middle of a town and then they have the slow-mo shot of Myers putting the mask on. Like there's possibly like 20 people that could be watching him do that and no one does anything. And it was more evident this time around. So I would have preferred for that to be a little bit more remote because it doesn't make sense that there's all these background people and none of them are like, what the fuck is going on over there?
Yeah.
I like the trick-or-treating sequences. He finally starts to feel like Halloween. Random other bullet point apparently put, do high schools really have Halloween dances? Is that something you think they do?
Well, I know Lakeside tried to have one a couple times when we were there, and they didn't have enough people buy tickets for it, so they canceled it.
I now vaguely remember that. Remember that.
It is a thing that exists. I'm sure nowadays it's... I mean, I don't think schools do it, but like you probably could. If this was an '80s film, that would totally make sense.
Oh, of course.
But like, it's not something very common.
Another note, just a couple things, because I know we're going to talk about it more with you. I don't want to say it, but like, I still think one of my favorite sequences is when Allison meets Myers for the first time. They have like that brand new music that the Carpenters make, where he comes back from around the gate, and just the lighting, the terror on her face, it's just fully believable. I think it's one of the best acted scenes in the trilogy. And then her just being just disheveled, running house to house, trying to find help. I think it's one of the better, 5-minute sequences in the entire trilogy. But there are some things that I don't love about it, and some loose ends and some stuff. Some
things that I don't like about it, and I'll talk about it here since on my list it's obviously a little bit higher. Like, part of it is just kind of like a slog to get through, because like they're playing up this whole like, oh, Lori actually is crazy. There's no reason why she should be doing this, when like the audience has seen 11 films up to this point. Like so for a lot of it, you're sitting there thinking like, okay, let's get to the point, just get through this. Because it's not like this is film 2, 3, whatever. Like, this is like the 11th fucking film that they've made. So, like, parts of it is just kind of like spinning its wheels, I feel.
More and more rewatches, I completely agree. Also, I mean, the ending's great. And that's a positive and a negative. Because I feel like they just blew their load so hard with the compound and everything that it does.
That again, if that was ending your trilogy, cool.
Yes, this is the problem. They have the parts and pieces, in my opinion, to make a great trilogy, but they are all fucking out of order. I know we're going to talk about it more later, so I don't want to stay in this too much longer, but
hell, man, burn them to a crisp and then put them through the fucking meat grinder thing. Instead of just, I'm going to be 2 6-year-olds fighting in a kitchen for 30 seconds, and I guess he's dead now.
I'll talk more about that later, but man, I love these cigarette graphics we're still having on the
TV has now moved past the original Halloween, and we're now into Halloween 2, so we're going through the Haddonfield Clinic. So I'm getting some very
the
nice
Memorial Hospital.
Memorial Hospital.
Sorry, I got to correct you. I know it's your podcast, but it is Haddonfield Memorial Hospital.
It's still a clinic.
I know. I'm just talking shit. Anyways,
Anyways.
Where are we at with you, buddy? And you're number 8, I believe.
Coming up next, for me, I don't know where this is at on your list. I'm surprised this one hasn't come up yet. I'm assuming it's soon. Halloween 2, Rob Zombie. Number 8.
Well, it's number 7, so should we just...
Yeah.
Do you think that's okay?
Yeah.
Should we just do it?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
So then we'll do my number 7 after we're done talking about this.
Fair.
Halloween 2. It's consistent for me that on the rewatch and part of my nostalgia list last time, Halloween 2 is better than Halloween 1.
Same.
For Rob Zombie. I don't agree with the decision that you should have recasted the child actor.
No.
It was only 2 years. I get the kid would have aged 2 years. There's no way he looked that much older that you couldn't have used him.
They said the problem was that he grew like a foot in 2 years. So they were scared.
So what of Michael Myers? He literally turns into a fucking Andre the Giant. And
that's the thing. Like they just said that he looked too old for the flashbacks, but I'm like, aren't all the flashbacks him sitting down? Like just about, yeah. So I mean, I don't. Of all the things, of all the nitpicks to worry about in the Halloween franchise, I want to say one thing. I love the way that Halloween 2 looks. The way it's shot, the camera angles, the lighting. It's just so far above 1 that immediately when it starts, I'm like, I just fucking love the way this looks. And it didn't look like a lot of other horror films coming out at the same time. So seeing it in the theaters, it just stood out to me, just starting that way.
I will say this, because we talked a little bit before this podcast, but Miles has not seen Deadpool and Wolverine yet.
Facts.
Michael Myers in this film is literally Sabretooth from fucking Deadpool and Wolverine. It's the same actor, and he looks identical. Literally looks identical. Like, when I was watching Deadpool in theater, I was like, oh, fuck, that's literally Michael Myers from Halloween 2.
It's Michael Myers without the mask.
Literally looked identical. The things I like about this is that it has the aspects of Rob Zombie films that I like that are good, I guess. It has the trashiness that's fun.
Yes.
The fun trashy, not...
the rock and roll trashiness, you know? Laurie's now working at a record shop / coffee shop. She's into rock and roll. She's into partying. She's into, you know, all the stuff that entices you at that young age, you know?
First time Michael Myers has been to a strip club that we've seen.
Hard.
Side note, it's a character named Buddy in the film. So shout out to that.
There you go. I like the whole fucking intro sequence with the two like morgue workers, like, you know, it's not really an ambulance, but kind of, they're taking his body to the morgue. Just the fucking crazy. Those are the moments, like the fucked up morgue workers and the shit they're saying. Those are the moments when Rob Zombie's dialogue actually feels, I'm like, all right, these weird middle-aged morgue workers, like, I can believe them saying these fucked up things. Like, it comes off believable. And the scene, I put cow wreck, when the guy's like, cow! Oh, yeah. Cow! He shines there because it works with what he's trying to do.
I mean, in tune with that, like, I love the whole opening segments of this film. Don't like that it's a dream sequence per se. I think there was a way that you could have done it where she escapes, and then it doesn't have to be a dream sequence, because it kind of does feel like a slap in the face. But I do love how every Halloween sequel, like direct sequel to either a reboot or a requel or the original, you're ending up in a hospital somehow. And the majority of the film, well, not necessarily the majority, but a good chunk of the film takes place in a hospital. I think that's in tune with the Halloween series, and it's just... that's something I really liked about it. It was a callback to the original. Halloween Kills does this as well. Of course, there's the ridiculous kill within there, where she gets stabbed 1 billion times.
1.5 billion times.
It's great.
We've
never seen, like, I would even maybe consider, there's aspects of Halloween Kills in this one where it's up for debate, but you've debatably never seen Michael Myers be this brutal before.
Yeah.
Especially during this dream sequence. Like, when he has Laurie, like, in that wherever Buddy's security booth or whatever the fuck he is, when he's bursting through the walls and shit, like, you've never seen him be that scary from, like, a violence perspective, I guess.
Yes.
The brutality perspective.
I liked all, like, the therapy aspects and, like, a more realistic approach to, like almost like a PTSD type incident where, like, this girl has gone through such a traumatic event. I also like
she's in therapy.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, she's in therapy. I like that, but I also like the fact that they show her at the beginning where she is just so fucked up, and I think some of the screaming in her dialogue's a little overdone, but they show her just, like, getting stitched up and sewn up. I mean, she went through such an extreme event where it's dramatized, but it still feels more realistic, where it's not like in some films somebody gets stabbed, shot, whatever, and they just are limping away at the end fine. Like, she clearly has broken bones. She has tons of open wounds. I mean, she's losing blood. It kind of feels... the whole thing feels like a much more realistic approach to the slasher genre. Something like that, you know?
Some other random things that I like about it, like, Michael Myers is also kind of funny in this. There's moments where you see Michael's humanity, and whenever Michael Myers is a human, like in all of these films, when he does something that a normal human would do, it's funny. Like, whenever you see him drive, it's funny. Like, he has, like, a one-liner in this. Like, not... obviously, he doesn't speak dialogue when he does this, But he murders everyone in this fucking strip club, and he turns the open sign to closed.
So good.
Like, come on, like, Michael Myers is pretty fucking funny in this. The biggest complaint that internet marks and all these fucking wannabe Halloween fans will say is like, this film sucks. He's not wearing the mask. He wears it a lot more than you think he does.
Yeah,
like if you're going, because after just rewatching it, he's really not unmasked as much as everyone makes to be. Like, people make such a big fucking deal about it.
I mean, let's be the thing is, okay, use the word loosely, the term loosely, more realistic approach. You think Michael Myers is wearing them fucking masks 365 days a year? You're a fucking moron. Like, I'm sorry, he's not doing that. Like, he's just not doing that. God, I love these background graphics right now. I'm gonna have to get this.
If I remember to, I'll leave a link in the description so you guys can see all the things that we're looking at. But I love the aesthetic, love the atmosphere. Like we said, I love punk/metal Laurie in this.
I like Loomis's character being fully flipped because it feels very modern and like he's like, fuck it, I found a way, again, cashing in on the whole true crime stuff that was, now as we're getting to the late 2000s, true crime becoming
everyone's making a fucking book today. Everyone's making a fucking podcast. Like, it's very realistic. Again, like, all the shit that people complain about with this film, it's very, like, surface level complaints, I guess.
I want to say one more thing on the stuff that I like. I do like the whole, like, I like that the Brackets are in this. I like Sheriff Brackett is one of the most human characters in the franchise. I love Laurie, and then what is her character? And I'm drawing a blank right now because I didn't write it down. Danielle Harris's character. What is she? I mean, she used the same name from the original. It is Annie. Oh yeah, you're right.
Brackett, yeah.
I like Annie and Laurie. I like their relationship in this and how it evolved from the first film because there's a lot of guilt and blame and stress between them. There's just a lot of smart choices with the writing and the stuff and how trauma and tragedy really affects people, you know, because a lot of these horror films, we just see what they go through initially. If there are any survivors, even in some of the sequels we talked about, we never hear from Josh Hartnett's character again. Right. We have no fucking idea what he thinks or what, you know, but in this, you know, and it's not like a Friday the 13th where the character survives partway through another film. We see them in, you know, a handful of clips and they get killed. Like, we're actually seeing...
like, Laurie's living with them. Like, they are main characters within this. They're not like a throwaway, like, oh, it's just a quick cameo from Brad Dourif or whatever. Like, no, he's in the film. Like,
we're seeing their day-to-day and how a year or two has gone by and how much it's affected them and how much they struggle and how they're trying to move on with their lives. And I think, honestly, as far as a premise for a Halloween sequel... you know, yes, I have it at 7, but I think premise-wise, it's one of the best, in my opinion.
Yeah. Again, I just like how weird it is.
Yeah, it's just so different.
Like, as you said it last time, it's kind of like the anti-Halloween film. Like, Rob Zombie is just kind of doing whatever. It doesn't feel like a cash grab at all, where you could debate Rob Zombie's original one, kind of just in premise, like... on its own merit, it is a cash grab. Like, you're remaking a big franchise. Yes. Like this, he didn't give a shit how much money it made. Like, he was just like, fuck it, they're paying me regardless.
His budget was double on this compared to the first one. Even though he did say that the Weinsteins were so fucking miserable to be around, and any, like, interaction he had with them on 2 was some of the worst times he's ever had making films. So, I mean... the fact that this film came out as good as it is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, honestly.
I love all the weird Rob Zombie creatures and, like, the fucking dream sequences.
Yes.
I mean, people say what they want to say about the white horse shit, but I mean, like...
I'm hit or miss on that. I the more I rewatch it, I'm kind of like, I could use a little less, but I get it, you know. I mean, that would be if I had some gripes. I could see them doing the white horse stuff a little bit less, and also the fact that it's nearly impossible to see we talked about this, prior to the podcast when we were kind of ramping up for it, about how he prefers both of the unrated cuts. So the theatrical cuts have almost no physical media releases, or now even streaming releases. Right. I prefer the original ending, to my knowledge, to this film when Myers doesn't talk. I would say for me that is a down. That is a
downgrade when he says die or whatever.
It's just not.
I do like the ending of this, like when she's in the asylum. Like I wish that they could have done a third one. Like I wish
they had a couple scripts.
Like I wish we lived in a universe where that could have happened.
The fact that David Gordon Green got a trilogy, which I actually like David Gordon Green, some of his other films outside of this, but I just blown away that. But again, I think a lot of it goes back to Zombie hating the Weinsteins. Which, hey, I mean, now that history is showed its cards, I mean, I don't blame them. I mean, I don't think they seem like very good people to be around. So,
yeah, I mean, overall, 8th on the list, but I still like the film.
Me, number 7. I mean, this is one where I honestly, when I looked at my list earlier, I thought this was number 6, and I almost flip-flopped it. I would say if any two, my 6 and 7, I could flip-flop them at any given day. But that was your 8, my 7. So keep going, brother. What's your number 7?
I'm going to guess my 7 is your number 3 or number 4-ish.
Okay.
That's my number 7.
Okay.
So it did drop a little bit from the original time I watched it. The original time I ranked it, rather, is what I'm trying to say. But that's only because some of the other films that I hadn't rewatched in a while I ended up liking more than I thought I was going to. So by default, Halloween 6 had to drop down just a little bit. Just a little bit. So Halloween 6 is my number 7.
Can I spoil something?
Is that your number 7?
It's my number 6.
It's your number 6.
So Curse of Michael Myers unfortunately dropped down my list. My nostalgia over the years.
I'm surprised. Wow.
This was
okay.
And I almost put Rob Zombie's H2 over Curse. I told you this about a month or so ago. I watched Curse, producer's cut first, went home. I think we actually hung out that day. Before we hung out, I watched Curse. We hung out. I came home. I watched the theatrical cut, fell asleep towards the end, then rewatched half the film and some behind the scenes. So I watched the fuck out of the Curse of Michael Myers for this podcast. But I'm going to let you do the talking first. Your number 7, my number 6.
I don't think I took a ton of notes for this one, to be honest. I have in my notes, and this is funny, I have in my notes it says, make Miles tell the story about watching both versions in the same day. In case you forgot to tell the story, I put that in my notes.
I have never done that with a film before, and so think about it. Then I rewatched part of it again. Within 48 hours, I watched a ton of Curse of fucking Michael Myers. I have to say, granted, your 7, my number 6, I still love this film, but my nostalgia for this film, I'd say I had a little bit more nostalgia, and unfortunately, watching it again, I'm like...
This film is, once again, very much a product of its time.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate because in this period of the 90s, Hollywood really wasn't making that great of movies. So.
This right here, this came out in 95, right?
Yes.
95, I think, as far as theatrical horror, might be the lowest of low year of anything. Like, I'm being honest, when you look at, like, calendar years, if you look at what came out in horror, I forgot, I looked at some, and even, like, independent on straight-to-video releases, 95 was a fucking, the year before Scream, and it, boy, does it show.
The year before Scream, the year after, I think New Nightmare was 94, maybe.
I think you're
right.
Or
93, something like, either way.
94, I think, yeah.
Either way, it's sandwiched in between, like, 2 iconic years, because 94 had some other stuff, too.
94 had, as far as outside of horror, it had some big releases, like
Forrest Gump was
Forrest
in 94.
Gump, that's exactly what I was
shit
going
like
to say.
that.
I mean, Jurassic Park was 93. I always want to think it's 94, but Jurassic Park was 93.
93,
right?
yeah, because I always think it's 94.
Yeah, same.
But
yeah,
it's not.
Yeah.
There's just so much like weird shit in this that
he
has pages of notes.
I have a page and a half of notes on the Curse of Michael Myers. So you say
I'll keep my, because like I said, mine were minimal. There's the stupid part where the lady calls the radio station and talk about how she wants to fuck Michael Myers.
So true though.
The tone is just all over the place, like super cheesy at times. Like when the old lady's describing what Michael did to his sister as a kid, and the lightning strikes in the background, like we're fucking watching a William Castle movie all of a sudden for some reason. And then it tries to be super serious at other times. So like I don't know what it was trying to be. Go ahead.
So the writer of this, I read a couple articles and I listened to a couple podcasts on it. So the writer of this film, I think, was just a Halloween. If I fuck this up, internet, it's fine. I apologize. This is from memory. Like a Halloween, like super fanboy. So he had basically been writing like Halloween, like fan scripts and stuff,
right.
But he was trying to keep it as close to tone to the original as he could, while trying to incorporate things from every single sequel. Now, I gotta say, I respect that. The fact that they were like, well, goddamn, we gotta figure out something with the Men in Black. We gotta figure out something with the Call to Thorn. We gotta, I respect that because, as you said earlier, famously now, if it would have been now, they would have just acted like 5 never existed and was started some brand new fucking timeline. But they tried to just incorporate everything and make it work. I know there were numerous scripts for this that were rewritten and written. I took notes. Do you mind? You want me
go
to
ahead?
tangent?
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I know, but I watched Producer's Cut first. I put my stuff for that. I mean, Producer's Cut. You and I talked about it on a multiple other podcast. This is the first time I ever watched it with like a clear. Second time I've ever watched it total. First time I've ever watched it with like an actual like, kind of like finished cut, if I guess I could say. Immediately the cult is way more of a focus. I mean, just from the initial output. I do like the radio broadcast stuff with like Loomis is listening to, because it kind of shows how, I think better than any of the other films, how like Myers has really affected the overall community in Haddonfield. I'm always a big fan, and you'll hear about it more later, about how Myers has like affected the community around it, because that is something that would be true. I mean,
something about Halloween Kills, man.
Yeah,
one of the things. I mean, anyway.
I do like that aspect of Halloween Kills, anyways. But I like how Loomis is kind of in his golden years. He's retired. He's kind of come back to earth a little bit. I like Tommy Doyle being back in it. His obsession with Myers makes sense, because it's like something that's ingrained in his memory from his childhood. I mean, obviously, what a traumatic event. I mean, it's something you could see realistically happening. Put funny notes. I'm like, how did no one see the bloodstains at the bus depot for like a whole day, or hear a baby crying in the bathroom? Like, there's just things you really have to
like something about this film, and I'll just like say it. I don't know if you felt the same way. There's so many portions of this that like it doesn't feel like you're watching a Halloween movie.
I can agree with that.
Not even because Michael's not in it, but like a lot of times it's like you're just watching some weird 90s drama thriller.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of parts where like it doesn't even feel like it's in that same universe.
You have to suspend the disbelief in this film a lot, though. You know what I mean, too. I'm just being like stuff like that. But no, I completely agree with that. Other funny moments, like the massive like thorn mark burned on the hay that's like 20 feet tall, like all these veils. Just other funny 90s tropes, if you want to bring that around.
It's so
the
90s.
Radio host throwing the party and all that. He's such a fucking sarcastic asshole. It's very 90s trope. One thing I don't like, the producer's cut doesn't have the head explosion, because that was part of the reshot. Myers, to me, compared to 4 and 5 feels a little more menacing in this, a little bit more akin to Halloween 2. I do like them coming back to Smith's Grove because it's part of the lore and part of that. The cult outfits are fucking ridiculous. Like, they're the most insane. They're huge and stupid. When I watched it initially, I put the producer's cut ending possibly more satisfying, but it kind of just ends. I put some theatrical notes. There's the random part in the producer's cut where Loomis talks about getting plastic surgery and they try to justify his makeup, which is so random. I'm just like, what a fucking... Like, I get it, but it's so random. I think all of the Wynn and Loomis interactions are actually better in the theatrical cut. The producer's cut ending I put was streamlined with the cult ritual and them escaping. I think it's a little bit... Watching them back to it's a little too abrupt. It makes more sense, but it's very abrupt.
Like, in general, the producer's cut of this film is more into... Well, I mean, obviously, because this is the original way that they made it. It's obviously more in tune with what they were leading up to in 4 and 5.
Yes.
The version that we ultimately got, the test screenings didn't like it, so they're like, fuck it. We got to throw in a head explosion. We have to, like, you know what I mean? Like, they were just doing, like, what boxes do we need to check where people are going to want to watch this? Because, like, the producer's cut was, like, deemed unreleasable up until a couple years ago when they finally put it on that Blu-ray.
The ending where it's, like, they're using the ruins to trap Myers so that they can just basically escape and drive away. Like, it's just very abrupt. Where, like, I remember watching it and being like, I thought there was more to the ending. And then it just fucking ends. And I'm like...
Yeah.
It makes more sense. But... And, like, some of the... I think in the producer's cut, isn't that the one where Loomis gets the mark? He gets the mark and has to...
Yes.
Get the mark of thorn.
That's only in the producer's cut.
So, again... if you're looking at it from an actual, like... continuity perspective from the beginning of the film to the end, I guess the producer's cut makes more sense. I thought, because I watched producer's cut first, I'm like, I feel like maybe I'm going to like this more than the theatrical. But then when I watched the theatrical, the dialogue is actually better. Like, it just, there's less bullshit in it. It's weird. There's more bullshit, but there's less bullshit
the theatrical cut, they were right, and this is a more enjoyable viewing experience for the casual watcher. If you're a hardcore Halloween fan, like the person who wrote it, I can see why you might like the producer's cut or certain aspects of the producer's cut more. For me, and like the reason why this kind of ranks a little bit lower than it did originally is just, I just don't like where it ended up. I don't like where they went with the cult stuff. I talked about this last time where it would have been better if the cult was a cult of people worshiping Myers and maybe making it easier for him to do this and that, not actually having Myers be a part or a pawn of the cult.
One of the worst scenes is just like all the cults are going, Myers just staying in the background like this. Like, it's just so... It's so jarring, especially to everything up to the series. Like, I can believe that maybe Myers would be... okay following a mysterious man in black, but not having a bunch of fucking weird cult members in these elaborate gowns.
It just seems ridiculous. Like, if Michael Myers, like, if the Michael Myers we knew from, like, the first couple films, like, no context, like, if you were to just drop him into that scenario, like, he would have just murdered everybody.
Well, that's why I put theatrical. Michael Myers chasing them through Smith's Grove and killing the cult is a much more satisfying watch. And the fact that even Wynn at one point says, we don't need those costumes, we all know whoever, like, even him making fun of the actual film,
right.
There's like, the theatrical just hits so much better. But I will say, you know, I had it, I think, it maybe like number 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, you had it pretty high.
It just, my nostalgia for this was just a little too high, and did not hold up on these rewatches. And I do think, though, I think they were actually correct. I think the theatrical cut is a more enjoyable. Not even just because I'm a sucker for head explosions, but I think overall, Myers not standing there like a fucking tool bag and watching the Cult do this stuff and him just slaughtering them and getting on with the other main characters. I just think it's a better ending, you know?
One thing we haven't mentioned, even though we've been talking about this for like 10 minutes now.
There's a lot here with this, with the two cuts, though.
I don't like what they did with Jamie at all.
I can
agree
with that.
If you're a fan of 4 and 5, like an actual fan of like the story arcs of 4 and 5, I don't know how you can like 6, like on that same level. Especially like when you get into, like, we won't go into a whole behind the scenes thing, but like how like Jamie Lloyd fucking wanted what the hell's her actual name? I'm forgetting now.
Daniel Harris,
like, they didn't want to bring her back because
they didn't want to pay her. They literally didn't want to pay her.
She was under 18. They wanted someone who was over 18 so they didn't have to like have a teacher on set who could work longer hours or whatever. So like she spent like $3,000 or something to get herself emancipated.
That's right.
So she could be in the film. And then they told her, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. You're impregnated with Michael Myers' daughter after he raped you, and you're going to die in the first 20 minutes. And we're going to pay you less money than what it costs for you to get emancipated.
Well, no, that's what I mean. I knew they didn't want to. I knew that they wanted to like grossly. I do remember that story now that you say that, but I knew that they just didn't want to pay her shit to be in it, and she was super disappointed after all.
So, for me, that kind of like ranks a little lower. Like, not even taking the behind the scenes aspect into it, just taking Jamie Lloyd like as a character, because she's like the main driving force between 4 and 5.
Yes.
So like, similar why I don't like Halloween Ends. What you're going up to, building up to the third film in a trilogy, in a way, it's kind of just like getting rid of it and doing something completely new, I guess. I don't know.
So that's your 7.
That was my 7, your
my
6.
So you want to keep going? What's your 6?
My 6 was one that you've already talked about. Okay. So there's not going to be a repeat.
Okay.
My 6 is Halloween 5.
Wow.
Halloween 5. So made quite the jump from being at the bottom last time.
I like this.
Halloween 5, I have it, and I kind of debated if I wanted to put it above 6 or below 6. Because like you said, there's not a lot that's super memorable about it. There's not a lot of crazy, insane kills. But when I put it on, like, it's just a good vibe. It's just a good watch.
Yeah.
There's not as much to complain about as there is with some of the other ones.
I agree with that.
It's not as entertaining all the way through. It has its ridiculous moments as well. Like Michael wearing that like old trucker man mask driving a car around Haddonfield. It's just like, okay, why isn't he killing this girl like instantly? Like, why is he driving her to the gas station? Like all this stuff. I love the beginning segments, as you already mentioned, him going down the river. Living with the Hermit is one of the most like iconic moments in the Halloween franchise for me. How this dude just like keeps him for a whole year. He just wakes up, kills him.
He doesn't just like after like a month or two just be like, oh, he's dead, and just dispose of the body. Like no sane human being would do that.
Well,
I think 5. Okay, so I like that. Okay, another point in case of doing this podcast, 5 has risen for both of us. Extremely significantly for you. And I really think if they could have had a clear game plan with what they wanted to do with 5, it would have risen even more on my list, because I think there is a lot to like there, but it is still a mess. But it's that sweet spot in the series where you're like, I don't care. It's like and it's also, maybe we'll give it a little bit of a pass because it's an 80s mess.
Oh yeah.
And I like 80s messes more than I like modern messes, you know.
So there's just a lot of it that's just like fun to me.
Yes.
Like
yes. And Tina's hot. I just want to throw that out there. Tina is fucking hot. I just want to throw that out there.
I talked a lot about in some other aspects of these parts of the list, like establishing mood and tone. This one, it does get a little bit of a ding because, again, when you're trying to build it up, it's just this lame generic ass music, and then this. I don't even think. Yeah, there's like an atmosphere of music and knife slashes whenever like the opening credits happen. It's super lame. There's the weird psychic link in there with the fucking woman in there. But I like a lot of the ideas because like they were rushing everything, so it's commendable that they have something that was even watchable within a year.
Yes.
And some of the stuff they came up with, I think, was kind of like maybe they didn't realize they were doing things that were like subtle things that could have been callbacks to the original.
Yeah.
Like obviously at the end of 4, she murders her stepmom or like whatever the case is, and now she's in an asylum, Jamie is, and she's having trouble speaking. Do we know another person who ended up in an asylum killing a family member and now doesn't talk? I don't know if that was intentional when they were doing this, but again, once you got to 6, you still kind of went with Jamie could be the new killer kind of thing.
Yes.
So I like that aspect to it. Because again, we, at this point, have never seen what Michael's childhood was like. So his childhood in the asylum could have been very similar to what Jamie was going through. These interactions that she's having with Loomis, who's to say those weren't the similar interactions that Loomis had with Michael when he was in the asylum? Like, just say something. What's going to happen? What are you going to do?
That's a
and
good
Michael's
point.
trying to write down whatever. We don't know because we've only seen those little non-canon TV edit things. I like the scene where, at the end, Michael is actually able to... Loomis is actually able to kind of, like, not subdue Michael, but, like, actually get him to have this human moment where he stops and he's just listening to what Loomis has to say. It's those moments where, like, you just feel like there's a deeper layer to this where even maybe they weren't noticing it at the time, but like you watch it back and you get the sense that like, okay, this dude was his fucking psychiatrist for 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
They have
like,
a relationship,
yes.
like an actual
Yes.
established relationship.
Yes.
Hence why I brought up the original ending to Rob Zombie's Halloween, because I'm like, oh, this fucking makes sense. Like, it makes sense with everything that's happened before it. It's just very unfortunate in some of these that wasn't what audience wanted. At this point in 5 and in a remake, they just want to murder. They just wanted fucking a rampage Michael Myers, you know?
I still don't necessarily care for Loomis's turn at the very end where he's using her as bait. Like, I get that he's at his wit's end. Like, he's gone through all this stuff, but, like, I think that's still a little tiny bit too drastic. Like, even if he knew... Like, he obviously doesn't know because he doesn't know what's going on. But even if he knew nothing was going to happen to her, he's still traumatizing the fuck out of this child one way or the other.
I'm a very open-minded person. I like it because I can see where it goes. But obviously,
Because you think about it, now at, like, this point in the story, Loomis is the only one that she can trust, I guess. And then Loomis is like, hey, fuck you, kid. I'm going to use you as bait. So to me, it's just a little bit odd. I was gonna say, I brought up in here, I guess I took a little bit more notes. The scene where Michael switches masks, picks up Tina, lets Tina kiss him through the mask, drive her to the gas station, and for some reason doesn't kill her. Like, I don't understand his motivations.
It's because Tina is literally the hottest girl in the whole Halloween franchise. But like, so that's my running joke.
This is where that's what I put on my notes. Like, these are the moments where, like, does Michael have intelligence? What is actually going on? Because sometimes he's acting like a ruthless killer. Sometimes he's just driving someone around. So, like, again, I think it kind of goes with they were rushed doing this. Like, they didn't really have a clear understanding of where they were going to go with this. I talked about in the other show that his mask in this sucks. And, like...
Can we agree it's not as bad as the H2O mask?
It's not as bad as the neck in it is ridiculous. But my main problem with it is It's not like he goes to the store and gets a new mask. It's literally the same mask that he's wearing in the other film, but it just magically switches.
I understand.
If he goes to the store, gets another mask, and the neck is a little fucked up, that's fine. That makes sense. The way that it is, it doesn't make sense because it goes from Disco Myers to Long Neck Myers for no reason.
I mean, it was 1988 to 1989. Do you know how much cocaine they were probably doing when they fucking made this film?
True.
Man, that's cool to see it jump that high up your list.
I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. So,
we talked.
Like I said, it doesn't have all the memorable kills. It doesn't have the greatest storyline, but there's just something about it that's just it just kind of just a good solid film to watch.
So we have finally arrived on our top 5.
Yeah.
My number 5, and this was one that rose a little bit, even though it shouldn't be a surprise. Halloween 4.
Okay.
So, I think personally, I mean, the intro would be the best in the entire fucking franchise, if we're being honest. Excuse me as I burp. How good is the fucking vibe in the first, 10 minutes of Halloween 4?
I swear to God, on the first podcast, I talked about the intro for, 10 minutes.
It's the greatest thing.
It's the greatest intro of any film.
Is it the best? Yeah, is it the best Halloween time imagery you've ever seen in a film?
Yes.
I think I might be.
It's the best imagery I've ever seen.
It's the most, and finally, it looks like they're in the fucking goddamn Midwest.
Yes.
They're not in California. I actually a note that I think watching this again, and I've watched this 2 or 3 times in the past 2 years. There's a lot of subtleties in Halloween 4 that on these rewatches I really appreciate and maybe bump it up a couple notches. I've always really liked Halloween 4. I'd always probably put it in my top 5, but well, I guess maybe I wouldn't. But now there's more films. We have to say now there's more films. But anyways, I love the elevator recap with the guard talking to them, coming to get him, because it felt organic. It didn't feel like they were making a film and they just had to throw a behind-the-scenes recap or some images. Some dude who's probably worked there for 20 fucking years, and these people that are coming to pick him up, just some regular workers, don't really know shit about Michael Myers, and he's like, you don't know who the fuck this is?
Yeah.
And then he does the recap, but they're consistently moving forward,
It's a nice way to do that recap that doesn't feel forced or phoned in, or having to actually, use a ton of flashback clips, or however most films probably wouldn't have done it at that time.
It's perfect because it captures the urban legend or that every small town has, where it's just some hearsay hey, this is what happened, you know what I mean? It's not some sort of typical film trope. I love that the Halloween theme doesn't hit until Myers is being moved. Myers starts to be moved and it just hits perfect. They're just the whole the first 25 minutes of this film fucking slaps for a modern term. It's fucking great. I put a note, why are there no armed guards moving Michael fucking Myers though at this point? The Loomis and Myers gas station sequence, I mean, come on, fucking amazing. Bucky at the power plant, I put legend. The streets get odd. I think I put this as a positive and a negative, the trick-or-treating scenes with Jamie and stuff. The streets are randomly super full of trick-or-treaters, then they're not, and she's just walking in fog. Just some little things that I kind of like, but also are inconsistencies. I do like Myers creeping around the sheriff's house. There's all those scenes where he's just looking through a window and the music cues is perfect. There's some bad shit though, the Brady and Rachel staircase scene takes forever. It's not realistic with the Myers character or anything. I put the one quote from the line where it's just a line where it's everyone's dead and I just want to go home. think that's just a perfect. This is great. Just a couple little, I liked that the local bar gang actually listens to Reason at one point. Like, they're like, oh yeah, it's pretty fucked up in there, and we're not the police. We're just gonna just go. That's fine. Like, there's actually some intelligent writing throughout the film. Kills I like the bartender's neck getting ripped out in the truck while he's driving. I think it's fucking one of the best in the series. And then of course the ending with Jamie. Again, I'm just spitballing little notes I like, but I love they kind of were like, oh, we're gonna pass it on. It's a great cliffhanger ending that feels organic for the series. I know that you are going to talk about this film probably some more. So do you have anything about what I said? Or
I mean, I agree with everything you said. Obviously, I mean, we're getting in the top 4 or 5. Yeah, I mean, I'll be talking about it here in a minute.
So what's your number 5 then?
My number 5 is another one you've talked about already. So dropped a little bit, just a hair from last time. It was the David Gordon Green Halloween 2018 is number 5.
All right.
Instead of previously number 3.
Wow.
Okay. I don't have a ton to add from what you've already said, which is kind of.
I apologize. I'm a big talker. I mean,
I still don't understand, and we talked about this last time. I still don't understand why Michael Myers is as big of a deal as he is in this film, when you put it contextually. The audience knows that we have 40 years of cinema of Michael Myers. Haddonfield knows one terrible night in 1978 and a terrible night in 64 or whenever it was. And again, every small town has their legend. Every small town has
their boogeyman.
Their boogeyman. But and I mean, I guess it's a little bit creepy because he wore a mask and like whatever. But like this podcast group is seeking him out. Like, okay.
From the UK. By the way, they're British. They flew thousands of miles to do this.
Like, you're telling me the imagery on the TV is beyond
so good.
You're telling me this hasn't happened elsewhere, too? Like, why Haddonfield? Why this one person?
Think about the coincidental timing. These people have done podcasts, and I'm assuming other serial killers are like, we just happened to be there at the right time. Now, granted, they bring the mask, which acts like the catalyst in my mind, is the trigger for Myers to want to continue 40 years later. But still, anyways, continue.
But I have the same opinion as I did back then. His mask shouldn't fucking matter to him if he's just some crazy dude. Like, why does the mask have anything to do with it? Again, the doctor needs to understand why Michaels does what he does. Like, again, he's probably seen a billion crazy-ass people in this asylum. Yes, he wore a mask. He was a little bit different. There is not the 40 years of cinema between this. It is the original film. This is the direct sequel. So there's the big scene where he says Laurie was the one that got away, and that's what's giving Michael a reason to live, or something like that. How does he know that? How does anybody know that if Michael hasn't spoken a word? There's just a lot of things in the film that don't make sense to me storyline-wise, which I guess on the original viewing, like, I knew that there were these problems, but there was definitely a lot of, like, recency bias going on. Because, again, you pop it on, you just watch it. It's a good film to watch.
It's a good film to watch.
It's a fun film. Again, as I said, when you were talking about it, it does turn its wheels a little bit. Because, again, even with Laurie's character is this way because of the character we know from H2O. And they built upon that. Once again, go ahead.
The worst thing that this film does, in my opinion, and I do, even having this at 8, I still just said I've watched it 4 or 5 times in the past 6 years. It's almost, this trilogy in general, and we're going to talk about it more in a minute, has become almost like a comfort thing for me. I do like, this has brought my fandom for Michael Myers back. So I am thankful in comparison to the other iconic killers. I've got no Nightmare on Elm Street. I've got no Friday the 13th. You know what I mean? Michael Myers has been brought back, and regardless of all the flaws, and there are a lot, regardless of how I feel, I'm still glad that it's back. But anyways, I'm off on a tangent. I kind of lost myself there for a second. Anyways, you're going to have to pick up on that. I don't know. I lost myself there for
I can't
for a
remember
second.
what I was talking about now.
See, now we're getting too deep into the podcast, guys.
But, like,
I'm sorry.
regardless, so, like, as I was kind of saying...
Well,
like,
Laurie... Oh, okay, I got it. I'm sorry. This character with Laurie would have worked a lot better if they would have not retconned Halloween 2.
Yes.
They're basing everything off of her having the one night, and she had maybe... Now, I have never had to try to fight for my life against a fucking mass murderer. I'm sure it is the fucking worst experience I would ever have in my whole life. But she...
is still living in Haddonfield.
Still living in Haddonfield. And she only had maybe about 25 minutes or less with this killer as compared to if she would have had Halloween 2, where she was chased through a fucking hospital for an hour and ended up having to, go to all sorts of lengths to survive. If they would have just said, this was my fucking sister, I survived the hospital too, it would have made... She would have went through an entire half of day of a traumatic experience. I could see her being a raging alcoholic, having all these fucking things, and not believing. And I think it would work better in the fact that she was a little psychotic because Michael Myers exploded or blew up or whatever, and he basically, for all intents and purposes, is dead. But she thinks he's not.
Right.
So that would play into the... He was lit on fire. He blew up in an oxygen tank. The whole room blew up. She's fucking crazy. I think that if they would have not retconned 2, it would have made 2018 make a lot more sense. What do you think?
The entire time I'm watching this sequel trilogy as they were coming out in theaters, I was waiting for them to reveal that they were brother and sister.
That they didn't retcon 2.
I was waiting for them to... Because in the first film... They're walking down the street or whatever, the three friends, and they're like, oh, isn't that her brother? And they're like, oh, no, that was just a rumor. I was praying, and Halloween Kills Her and Ends, they were just going to be a moment where they were like, the rumors are true. Something like that. To, again, give it that level of depth. Because, again, she's one girl that survived a rough night.
But again, she only experienced him for maybe 20 to 25 minutes. I know that I'm downplaying. I know that that would be the most horrifying thing. But the extent of her obsession over 4 decades would have made more sense with 2.
The podcasters coming to her house. Like, yeah, she survived, but it's not...
Okay, the kids survived. Tommy survived.
Tommy Doyle survived.
Other people survived. Like, why is it just... I understand that she was the oldest, but...
You needed to have the brother-sister connection. That, in my mind, regardless, even though it wasn't in the original film, that is what the series has been focused on for 40-plus years. So, for me, that retcon, where, again, that's why I don't like the whole, we're going to ignore this and keep this and blah, 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 blah. If they would have found a way to not retcon 2... I just think in general this trilogy would have worked a lot better because it took away an essence of what the series was, not where it started with, but what the series was. It loses that connection.
It's in all honesty too, if I'm really nitpicking, there's no reason why they had to do it. Like, it was just such an easy, just changing a few words, doing a few things, because 2, as we're going to talk about later,
you probably could have still
incredible.
If they didn't like 2 for whatever reason, they could have still retconned 2, but revealed through other ways that they were brother and sister.
That familia connection, it just, I don't know. I just love it. I love it for the franchise. But anyways, I feel like any other positives you want to talk, because this isn't your top 5.
This isn't my top 5.
It is a fun watch. I will say, no matter where I place it, it's a fun fucking watch.
I mean, there's not a ton to really say about it. I mean, obviously, the ending's fantastic. I like where... Because even at the end of this, they have the ending scene where the granddaughter's holding the knife. Like, you could have done something with that that's not followed up with. I don't know. Like, there's a lot about in this film that I like. Again, a lot of it we've talked about through your entry. I talked about it last time. But I didn't like it as much as I did the first couple times I watched it. I think this is the third time that I've watched it.
This is each time... Now I'm kind of at where I'm at, where like I've seen it 5 times, and I'm like, all right, I like it a lot, but it's still definitely middle of the road for me. I think also, too, because it's a good time. It brings back characters that I love, but it's pretty by the books if you actually watch the film. And then the ending, they just go balls to the walls, and you're like, well, where do you go from here? That's the hardest thing about the film is when you know it's a trilogy now. I know you want to talk about, ranking each film based on the merits of just what the film is, and I respect that. But the fucking hard part is it's a trilogy, and they give the best climax of the 3 in the first film. As a filmmaker or writer, it's like, I don't know. I'd be like, well, what the fuck do we do now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously you can come up with something, but you're always going to be handcuffed by how fucking hard you went when that first film's ending, It is a good film to, I guess, recommend. Yes. Because, like, if someone's, like, getting into Halloween or horror or whatever, it's like, oh, like, I've seen the first one, but, like, there's so many needlessly complicated timelines and, like, all this bullshit. It's like, well, where the fuck do you start? Like, obviously, I have a few films on this list that I've ranked higher, but, like, if you're telling someone, like, oh, well, if you like the first one, like, watching the 2018 one, it's an easy one to pop on and kind of, like, understand, like, what's... Like, I would... Yes. Obviously, I have Halloween 4 ranked higher than this because I haven't talked about it on my list. Yeah. But I'm going to recommend someone watch 2018 before I recommend you watch 4, I guess. You know what I mean? All right. Yeah.
It just makes more sense. I don't know. I love... My favorite scene in the whole film is not the ending, actually. It's the scene where it's the big one-shot take of Michael walking through the streets. He goes into the couple houses. He does the stab on the window. He, like, passes a baby in the crib. He just kind of looks at the baby and keeps going. Like I said, when Michael has human moments, it's hilarious. Yeah.
How good is the fucking kid, though? The little kid, on a side note, as a final note.
I've seen people on the internet hating on this kid now. I still thought he was funny.
I thought he was... Every time I watch this film, I think he's so fucking funny. I'm going to transition it in a minute into something else, but... David Gordon Green, I still think, in this whole trilogy, has moments that feel organically funny, and he knows how to write humor, but it doesn't feel out of place.
Yeah.
I think he does shine in those moments, but I think the kid's fucking hilarious. There's some good humor. Maybe that's what brings me back to this trilogy, since I've watched all of them multiple times now, that regardless of the inconsistencies, there's still some good humor, some good gore, and there's some other stuff I like. So, but anything else to say about that? Is it for your number 5?
No, that's my number 5. We're on to your 4, and I hope to fucking Christ that you finally talk about Halloween Ends and you don't have Halloween 3 below Halloween Ends, because I know you love Halloween 3. Well, that's about it for this time, you guys. I hope you enjoyed our second installment of every single Halloween film ranked. If you guys liked the show, make sure you're subscribing over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows, and make sure you are spreading the good word of Buddy's House of Horror podcast. And with that, we will see you tomorrow with the epic finale of every single Halloween film ranked, or rather the Halloween Ends edition, if you will. And with that, we'll see you back here tomorrow, so take care and stay spooky.